Bartholomew Town, bringing Rhode Islanders closer to their world since 2018. Brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Newport Film, Half Street Group, Navigant Credit Union, and the Audubon Society of Rhode Island.
Bartholomew Town.
Hi, everyone. Welcome into Bartholomew Town. I'm Bill Bartholomew. So much to get to today. Of course, what took place over the weekend with the strikes in Iran, and no doubt about it, that has taken what is already a world in disarray, what already feels like a moment of true chaos domestically and globally, and just amplified it to an extent which we don't fully understand, and we may not fully understand for quite some time. I mean, the reality is, folks, there are so many overlapping themes with what we saw took place in the lead up to and the beginnings of the Iraq War, or Operation Iraqi Freedom, as was actually known. I certainly remember all of the detail of that. I followed that extremely closely, as many of you did, as many of you lived that. I have friends who were sent over there to serve or to work in other capacities. And beyond that, we just know the type of destruction, the type of movement that takes place anytime you get into these sort of adventures, misadventures as they were. And right now, it seems to be a moment where, in addition to the chaos on that global level that we understand is taking place, and the alliances or the spheres of influence that already existed but are now just amplified that much more, you have to look at this moment and say, or ask the question of how much of this is at least in some major part tied into a Trump decision to say, let's take the spotlight off of that which is taking place domestically in terms of the media, in terms of public awareness. Let's create a level of fear. You know, if you go outside, some Iranian's going to nuke your car or whatever it is. And this just serves to distract from the undermining of the system of democracy that we have here in this country, and the nonsense and, frankly, outrageous conduct that we've seen with the immigration operations. And I mean, where do we even start with the President Trump doctrine of just create chaos? That has worked domestically for them to create so many things happening at the same time that it's hard to keep track of. Now you add in this sort of misadventure in the Middle East in tandem or partnership, or some would argue under the direction of Israel, and we find ourselves in an extremely scary moment. And that impacts us greatly here in Rhode Island. That impacts us everywhere for obvious reasons, right? And it creates a moment right now where, as I wanted to sign on today and talk about the state budget, I wanted to reflect on Pride over the weekend, I wanted to reflect on a couple other things, you have to lead off any conversation with what took place in Iran and the questions about where we're going. There's lots of analysis. There's lots of expertise. I've been reading on this for years. I'm sure many of you as well understand the dynamics of what we're now in the midst of. And on a local level, it creates a level of just a lack of confidence that things are going to in some way trend in the right direction. This type of chaos is a tremendous asset for Trump and his organization to distract from the realities of what's happening in this country, the undermining of the Constitution, and frankly, some of the evil and just un-American activities that we've seen take place. So Iran, on so many levels, lots to look there. Let's take a look at what some of the locals said. Jack Reed, he's outraged in a statement. Seth Magaziner, Congressman Magaziner, they're talking about the constitutionality of this. Magaziner talking about the Constitution giving Congress and the president the authority to decide where and when we wage war. The attack in Iran, Magaziner says, is a violation of the checks and balances of our nation. So, I mean, that's going to be the front and center theme. Gabe Amo, Congressman Amo, had this to say: only Congress has the power to declare war. Trump's unconstitutional unilateral strikes against Iran endanger Americans and undermine Congress's authority. He risks dragging the U.S. into another endless war, breaking his promise to end foreign conflict. So that's really what this comes down to at this moment on a political level. These spheres of influences, these realms of influence, right? Particularly within the Republican Party, where I've seen locally Republicans speaking out against this, okay? And I've seen locally Republicans in Rhode Island speaking out against the nature of this action in terms of unilateral decision by Trump. The fracturing of MAGA. This is probably the major story of the moment. And Trump knew this. They knew this going in, that there was a calculus that was taking place. How much can we lose? How much can we regain of those quote unquote America First individuals who voted for Trump on the grounds of, well, we're going to stay out of foreign conflicts. And we have done anything but that. And look, here in Rhode Island, yes, we're protected by an Atlantic Ocean. No, I do not have any level of fear in going out in public or going out in public events. At the same time, we are proximate to New York and Boston, and obviously we have the Navy War College here. We're proximate to Groton. You can make Quonset a part of that equation. So you can't just put the blinders on either and say that as this thing potentially spirals more and more out of control, that Rhode Island is entirely isolated, even though as a whole, the U.S. obviously geographically, in terms of, direct strikes from Iran or something like that, we're obviously protected. But what we're not protected from is the sort of terrorism, militia, one-off, maniac type of responses that we may see. And that changes a little bit of the dynamics here in the Ocean State and beyond. Governor McKee already indicating that he's got his team, his state police and beyond involved in just sort of preparation. Again, there's no credible specific threats. There's no reason. Again, I'm not going to change my habits. I'm not even going to say, head on a swivel or anything like that. But we can't stick our heads in the sand either and just say, well, this doesn't affect us here in Rhode Island. It certainly does. And we just have to wait and see at this point how much further this thing goes. So that's there. I felt like we couldn't start a conversation on a Monday morning without addressing what took place over the weekend. What also took place over the weekend was the Pride Parade. Great to see a lot of you out there. I mean, I saw a lot of listeners. I saw a lot of elected officials, people in the political realm who were inside, or I should say the sort of general political media, nonprofit, activist sector who were involved in the parade itself. So I went down to the parade, and this was prior to at least the public acknowledgement of these strikes in Iran. And I have to say, the parade was so beautiful on Saturday night in downtown. It was such a beautiful event. Actually made me emotional. It was like really, there were moments that were just I was so proud of the city and the state and the people involved in it. It was just a great event from an artistic standpoint, from a celebratory standpoint. It was just great to see some of the youth out as well. And some of these kids, man, they're just like, they're going to some school. I don't know what school. Maybe it's Coventry or North Kingstown. Who knows where they're going? And as someone who in my own time in public school in Rhode Island felt, not totally isolated, not totally out of the loop, but kind of out of the loop, kind of out of the center of gravity, if that makes sense. It was so great to see some of the youth's reaction to the parade and the opportunity to say, hey, right here in my community, I have not only allies, not only people that are in a similar that have felt the marginalization that has come their way for no good reason. But I'm in community, and my community as a whole, by and large, save for a couple of bigots on Twitter, and a handful of other people out there, my community is behind me, with me, and for me. So love seeing that. Love seeing the politics or the politicians that were marching in the parade. It felt genuine for the most part. Providence City Council, you name it. Mayor Smiley sprinting at the front. I mean, the workouts that apparently he does coming in handy as he's sprinting up and down the parade route, shaking hands. A lot of other interesting things I could break down on a political level. How about John Gonzalez, Councilor John Gonzalez, not marching with the Providence City Council? He was in his own place. Now, you may have noticed Gonzalez. He's been doing a lot more media stuff, social media stuff. He was on the Club Ambition podcast. He's running around on TikTok. I think he's trying to get into that lane a little bit. And he was out there on his own and had his own content creator following him around. And you got the sense, okay, is Gonzalez planning a run for mayor? What's he doing? Obviously, he's trying to build his brand in a significant way. He's always been sort of doing that. There are a million little political nuggets that I got out of the Pride Parade, but I don't even want to share anymore because the bottom line is the Pride Parade was amazing. And if you didn't get a chance to go and you want to see some images, you want to see some video, Instagram at Bill Bartholomew is the best place. That's where I put the most stuff, or across social media. I posted a bunch of things, but I'm down there. And then all of a sudden my phone, I start getting texts. Hey, we dropped bombs on Iran. Hey, did you see the news? Did you see the news? And I thought to myself, what kind of world do we want to live in? Or what kind of world do I want to live in? And the world I want to live in looks a lot more like that Pride Parade than the one that looks like what was taking place even on the internet around the information's emanating from and about what took place in Iran. And to see those two stories, those two moments, to feel those two feelings, to go from being at the Pride Parade for several hours and being in community, being around people who are generally positive, generally excited about life, feeling the protection of Rhode Island, the magic of what we've built here, and then to compare that to what was taking place in Iran and what was taking place in the international community that I know, several of whom people that don't necessarily live in Iran or Israel, but are proximate in general sense, and their fears. It's just one of those moments where you pause and say, boy, there's a lot of different things that we could do right now as a society, as a species. And we can certainly look on a macro level, on a broad-based level about we could become war-oriented or we could become love-oriented, right? The division couldn't have been more clear for me on Saturday night. And I think that's part of why it kind of really struck me with emotion as I was out there at the Pride Parade. Very, very powerful situation. And that contrast, significant. But kudos to all the organizers, all the participants, and all the attendees that made that Pride Parade and the festival as a whole just a spectacular weekend. What a weekend it was. Great to be out and about. I was out in Newport. I was out in South County a lot. We have an unbelievable state. We have an unbelievably beautiful geography, topography, layout, and people that are here. Love Rhode Island. Love Rhode Island so much, and love the feeling that I get when I see some of you guys out there and we have these amazing interactions, because when you compare that to what's happening on a global or national stage, it does feel like we have a little bit of a bubble that we can hide inside of. And sometimes, you know what, it's the right thing to do, to retreat into that bubble a little bit. I think that might be the case now. We may need to start, as these horrors are taking place globally. I'm not saying turn a blind eye. I'm saying protest. There was a protest downtown last night, an anti-Iran war protest, very successful one from what I heard and saw. What does success mean? Success means people turn out, they're loud, and they get their message across. It's not going to stop the war, but it's going to create even a modicum of public opinion definition. And we may be in that moment where Rhode Island needs to strengthen itself, and we may need to be a support system in a way that we haven't been anymore. Look, are we going into World War III anytime soon? I think we've got a long time before we're going to see that kind of all-out meltdown. But we're entering a moment now, or in fact, we've been in a moment right now where the chaos and the pain of the stupidity and the evil and the selfishness and a system that is entirely broken is coming home to at least haunt our souls and our emotions. And one thing we can do, as evidenced by the Pride Parade, as evidenced by some of the stuff I saw around the state this weekend, on this beautiful weekend, that may be one response. So those are my thoughts there. Obviously, we've got this heat wave right now. It's supposed to be unbelievably hot tomorrow in the 90s and close to 100. And they've got cooling shelters, warming shelters in Providence and around the state set up. Of course, you can, just look on a municipal level specifically for what, if you or someone you love is in need of that, that's an option for you, of course. So before I get to the assault weapons bill and more generally the budget, again, I'm just going to do a general overview. I'm not going to sit here and break it down. We will do that. When the governor signs it and we have we know exactly what's happening. We pretty much do. But when we know exactly what's happening, at that time, I'll do probably like a roundtable and we'll break it down. And some people's eyes glaze over the budget. You go like, oh, who cares, right? I mean, just get me through the day. And they're spending a bunch of money on things I don't even understand, and that's fine. Some people want to know the nitty gritty details, and there's outlets for that as well, where you can get really, really deep into the weeds of what took place. But we'll give you an overview right now, and we'll give you kind of just, again, that cursory so you have a little bit of information, but we'll break it down in more detail later. But before I do that, I just want to make a note right now about the retirement of Steve Klamkin at WPRO.
Bartholomew Town.
Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Yeah. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. And I don't know how publicized this has been. I don't think it's been that publicized at all. Maybe this is the first, outlet to report this. But Steve Klamkin, the longtime 26 years at WPRO, retired last week. And I got a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, I want to talk about the big picture, which is that Steve Klamkin is one of the best reporters, one of the most important reporters in the state of Rhode Island. And Steve Klamkin is the best radio reporter. He's a national level radio reporter, as good as it's going to get. And his voice, his sign off is as much a part of WPRO radio as anything. And many people have told me that they tune in to WPRO on the top and bottom of the hour so that they can hear the newscast and what Steve's been up to. And when you lose a reporter like Steve Klamkin, you lose somebody who knows the business. I'm not talking about knows the business of how to get famous and work the system. I'm talking about somebody who knows the business of reporting, telling people what they saw, how to get information out of politicians or newsmakers, whoever it may be, and how to translate that information into very, very digestible, very easy to understand, and very well illustrated with audio news reports on the radio, and through his photography and his writing on 997WPRO.com, but principally through the radio. And when you lose a Steve Klamkin, you lose institutional knowledge. You can line up every 25-year-old reporter that you could possibly find. I mean, there's a couple of them on Channel 10 right now that they some of them are they're doing a decent job in a challenging environment. I mean, television news, come on, man. I mean, the resources aren't there like they used to be, and it's just not what it was, right? I mean, people are still watching, but it's not what it was. But there's still people growing, obviously, in the papers and so forth, and even over on the radio at the other station, the NPR station. But nobody told a story like Steve Klamkin. And look, this is not an obituary. I mean, let's relax. I mean, Klamkin might be out there working again, but he retired from WPRO. But here's the thing. The guy leaving this marketplace, you lose such an amount of institutional knowledge that comes in a moment of responsiveness on working a story, that can come in a moment of preparation, reflection, education. When you lose the institutional knowledge that a reporter like Steve Klamkin brings to the table, we are worse off for it. Whether that's Scott McKay and his retirement, I mean, we could go on and on and on. And Klamkin, he lives in that same orbit as the greatest reporters ever in Rhode Island in terms of his institutional knowledge. I mean, this guy knew the state. He knows the players. He knows the stories. He's lived it. He's worked it. He's been there. He's been there in crisis. He's been there in moments of joy. And he knows how to tell Rhode Island's story as well as anybody ever. So Steve Klamkin is going to be dramatically missed in terms of a voice, in terms of a presence on a news level here in this state. Very, very difficult to replace. You won't replace. For me personally, I'll keep it short. Steve Klamkin, I listened to Steve Klamkin and I was like, that's an amazing talent. I love news radio, addicted to WCBS and all that business growing up. The format just piqued my interest at an early point, and I just have to say, it just continued to grow for me over time. And when I discovered WPRO, when I moved back to Rhode Island, well, I knew WPRO when I couldn't believe the thing still existed. When I turned it on, I was like, oh my God, this thing is still round the clock, local talk, local news, local everything. Klamkin hooked me. I was just in his ability to perform on the mic. That's what separates the great reporter from the mediocre reporter, especially in the broadcast field. It's the art. Art is the separator in everything. The artistic value, the artistic determination, the artistic performance. Klamkin had that, and that supported his ability to tell those stories. And for me, I met Steve Klamkin at the Newport Folk Festival. I was playing at the For Pete's Sake thing. It's like the open stage where you get up and play a couple of songs or whatever, and inside the museum. That was like 2015, and I was up there. I performed and packed house, and it was an amazing experience in my life. And I get off the stage, and this guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, you're from Rhode Island?" "Well, I just moved back here. Yeah." And, "Hey, can I interview you?" And I was like, "Sure." "Who are you?" "I'm Steve Klamkin, WPRO News." So yeah, Klamkin interviewed me for his show on WPRO, and we became friends, and his support of my own career has been unspeakable in terms of mentorship, in terms of motivation. Watching Steve Klamkin work a story on the street, in the studio, in the State House during COVID, a major story, breaking news, whether it be weather related, whether it be the Washington Bridge. I got an education that you couldn't get from Columbia, you couldn't get from anywhere in the world. I don't care how much money you paid to go to journalism school. What I learned from Steve Klamkin on a day in, day out basis was how to do the job. And I'll miss Steve Klamkin on WPRO, and everybody should as well. And I'm going to see if Steve will come and do a podcast. Again, I hope he still works elsewhere, even on a part-time basis. I'm sure he will. I'm sure you'll see and hear from Steve Klamkin again. But I had to note that. Had to note it. All right, let's just talk about the budget here and what passed over the weekend. Let me just give you a summary. $14.3 billion state budget for fiscal year 26, which starts in a couple of weeks, July 1st. McKee probably going to sign it. We don't have a line item veto here in Rhode Island, remember, so it's an all or nothing thing. On the healthcare, they significant funding increases for a number of healthcare sectors, including $40 million for primary care and about $40 million for, the number is $38 million for hospitals, a little bit for boosting nursing homes, a little bit more housing stuff, especially on the homelessness side, an additional $8 million for services on top of the governor's initial proposal. They've also got this new tax on non-owner occupied homes over $1 million. That's the Taylor Swift tax. A lot of people up in arms about that. Look, there are plenty of people in Rhode Island who bought a summer home when it was $112,000 back in, 1970 something. That home has appreciated to an in excess of $1 million. Now they're going to get nailed with a tax. Not everybody who has a second summer home, of course, is Taylor Swift or has that kind of dollar amount associated with them. At the same time, we've got to find ways to generate low-income housing tax credits, so on and so forth. This program will do that. If RIPTA benefiting a little bit here, there's going to be a 2-cent per gallon tax increase. That's going to go to RIPTA. A big boost, about $60 million above the current year's level when it comes to K-12 education. got rid of that nonsensical, corrupt payday lending exemption in the state's laws. And now that annual interest rate is at 36%. That's still an outrageous thing. We're going to look at this with a lot more detail. I'm going to have some people on in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about that. Smoking restricted in most parts of the casinos, not all of it. Pension fund reform. Look, we're looking at a time now where we do not have the level of support from the federal government with the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. So we're kind of on our own, right? We're back to like May estimated revenue conference. That's literally the numbers that we're going to be working with. On top of that, look, the assault weapons stuff, they passed a ban on the sale and purchase of assault-style weapons. You can still possess them. And this is kind of performative. I mean, I hate to be that person. I know that a lot of people are feeling like this is a quasi-victory. If the political will is there to ban assault weapons, then they would do it. It just isn't. It just isn't. I mean, if you lived in a society that was moving towards utopia and was trying to be realistic about what type of existence we would have, you would just ban them. We can't do it because of political interest. And also, I'm not sure the language of the initial proposal would have passed constitutional scrutiny. So number of reasons for that, but that's kind of, again, your overview. We're going to get you more detail coming up soon, but I just wanted to make sure we at least talked about it, touched on it, and got something in there. Okay, coming up this week, Rhode Island Health Director Dr. Larkin will join me. We'll break down another Newport film director. The big season is upon us. We'll talk about that. We'll talk to that director and a whole bunch more. It's Bartholomew Town, Rhode Island's podcast of record. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.